Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started because we're right on time. My name is Allison Tamer. I'm going to be the host for this room today. We have two presentations lined up for you, or three presentations, I guess, as it goes. Our presenters today, we're going to have Demystifying AI for Transportation Professionals. Caitlin Mabry and Amin Hezavi are going to be doing that. They're within our new NCDOT OSA group. And also we have Kevin Lacey from Exult Engineering, who will be presenting using an artificial intelligence in NCDOT real-world applications and lessons learned from that. So please welcome me, or join me in welcoming our speakers.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Just to kind of cue us up here, we're very thankful to have Kevin and Amin with us today. We're going to kick off by me kind of giving you an overview. Kevin's going to dive into a real-world use case and some of his findings and perspectives as a longtime DOT staffer. And then we're going to attempt to do a small group session. I did not realize we were in this big of a room, so please be patient with us. You will eventually be asked to find neighbors that are your friends to have a brief conversation with at the end of this. So look around and see who you might want to talk with about these things, okay? All right, so diving in here. What the heck is AI? Does anybody else ask themselves that question? What are we talking about on a daily basis? You know, every conference we go to is talking about how this is the next big thing. But I've been working in some sort of IT enterprise application development for the last 15 plus years. I still get confused because everybody's got a different definition and how we're going to apply it's going to be different. So we're going to try and simplify it a little bit today. Just up on the screen is an attempt to overwhelm you by the number of models that are out there of how to do good AI. So we're trying to do our best as a department to grab from a variety of best practice sources and apply those principles to the program as we're standing it up here. So AI refers to computer systems that analyze data and performs tasks, normally needing human intelligence. That said, one of our best practices as an agency, and we're looking to put processes in place to ensure this, is good AI, in my view, for government is still always going to have a human in the loop. So we are not looking for AI to replace our engineers and design plans for us. That would be inappropriate, right? We need professionals with critical thinking skills on top of that. So just wanted to kind of put that out here from the front. We're looking at AI on how can we take those repetitive tasks. What are those patterns that we have to do over and over again that maybe take us away from the good subject matter content that we want to be focused on as engineering professionals and others across the department? AI is good at a lot of different things, but one of the things it's really good at is synthesizing a lot of information. So how many of us have, you know, that NCHRP report and that TRB report and this other report, right? And that takes a lot of time to review all that information, and sometimes you just need that quick hit. Really good for that. The other way I'm going to talk about AI today is as you saw for the previous slide, there's a lot of different ways you can bucket AI when we talk about it. Today I'm going to put it into two buckets for us and kind of talk through these. We have the out-of-the-box generative AI bucket that we will talk about. So that's your Copilot, chat, that's your ChatGPT, those sorts of things. What does that mean? And then there's another world of AI, which is similar to other application development that we do as a department, but those custom AI solutions. So those are going to be purpose-built tools for a particular business process or a particular group that we want to do dedicated training on that AI tool to increase our reliability in that moving forward. So we're going to talk about it in kind of those two buckets. But before we dive into all of that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's been going on in North Carolina when it comes to AI. So back in September, Governor Stein put out an executive order on AI, which to all agencies, this really established something that we already knew was going to be a priority of having NC be a truly competitive state in the place of AI, making our state government the most AI literate in the country. So that's our charge. With that charge, all agencies were asked to set up an AI oversight team because we know that these things come with risk and we need to make sure we're mitigating that. And it also set up something called the AI Accelerator Program, which is we need to test out this technology. Is our idea even valid, right? Is AI potentially even going to help me in this area? So we have access to a team at what I'll call Big DIT, our central IT for the state, that can do some 60-day sprints for us to start testing out some of these technologies. That AI accelerator, as well as some other reasons, is going to lead to our small group activity later, because we want to start hearing your ideas. Where do you think that these technologies could be applied? And our staff to help you figure out, is it a good fit for the accelerator program? Because it's access to some free help to help vet some of these ideas, and we want to take advantage of that as much as we can as a department. Out of the state level, we also have some new guidance on using publicly available generative AI tools, so I'll talk a little bit about that, and also talk about where you can get training if you feel like you need it, and there's different pathways for training on, I only need to know it at this level, or I want to get really deep. So we have both those options available for you. So when it comes to how we're responding to that executive order, and this was on our plan for a little while as a department through our data and AI program development, we're required to set up an oversight team for governance. We are actively working to figure out the exact makeup of that team, but think about it as we're going to have some business process leads to talk about it from the business perspective. We're going to have IT leads to make sure that our security and those types of implementation considerations are there, as well as legal, as well as fiscal, because AI is not, and a lot of things we do in IT are not, but it's not a set it and forget it tool. It has the potential to have exponential cost associated with it. We got to have ways to make sure we monitor that. We don't like surprise bills in government. We like predictability. That's not how these technologies work, so we have to keep that in mind. So that committee is going to, one of their main charges is going to be monitoring risk on these things, vetting use cases, deciding, when and why they're appropriate, and also make recommendations to make sure that we can be AI ready as a workforce, both with our own staff as well as our business partners out there. So that's going to be asking questions of, are we ready? Is our staff ready to take these things on? One thing I want to really emphasize in this presentation today is your data ready? Without good data, you're not going to have good AI. We're really good at making data. Are we good at maintaining it? Are we good at making sure it's up to date? All those things are going to drive if your AI solution is going to be successful. All right, so diving into our two buckets here. First, I'm going to talk about these custom AI use cases. So again, tailored to a very specific need, designed for a particular purpose. Out of the box, Gen AI tools that you guys think about, those are going to be your best individual support tools. How do I perform my job quicker, more efficient, get help? That's going to be where that's appropriate. So we're going to dive into custom here first. So to kind of relate it to a transportation life cycle. So we know from a transportation asset perspective, it is not a set it and forget it, right? We have to planning, program, and prioritization. In the AI world, we need to truly identify the problem. All of us are getting, calls from vendors on a regular basis of, I've got this thing for you. But what are we actually solving for? And we need to ask our question, that has to drive where we're investing, is being really clear on what the problem is and what the measurement of success is going to be, right? Defining what that's going to look like. So next phase in our project life cycle, equating that to our AI life cycle here, pre-construction. Pre-construction in the DOT land, right? We're going out, we're gathering data in the field, we're analyzing it, we're making sure that it's ready to go to submit that permit application and everything's together. AI world, is our data ready? Can it be accessed by these tools? Has it been cleaned up? Is there quality up to snuff to be able to do that? Next step in our process is letting. In the AI world, think about that as, are you going to build it? Do you need someone to help you build it? How do we connect that more technical professional to the business need to really design that custom use case out for you? Next step down the road, very similar, construction. That's when people start getting excited, right? We see the cones out on the road. That is equated in the AI lifecycle to build and deploy. That's when we actually know what we're doing, we're building the thing, we're testing it out, showing it to people, and need to think about change management in that regard as well, right? We can't just go out and construct a road. We have to plan for what are our detour routes around it. From a change management perspective on this, We also have to think about that with our deployment. When we put these new technologies in place, how are we going to make sure that they are integrated into business processes? And then for the next step, if it didn't work, how are we going to identify that and gather those lessons learned to apply to future use cases? So I made maintenance a little bit bolder down there because I just want to emphasize that sometimes I think we think of like, oh, the thing's been deployed, we're done. AI very much does not fall into that category. We need to make sure that we're monitoring it, because the longer it's out there, it's training itself. Has it been training itself in the right direction? Or are we potentially seeing more sway over time? So we've got to build that into our processes a little bit differently than we have before. So shifting to out of the box. A lot of stuff on the screen here. I just want to talk about where we're at as a department. We are a Microsoft shop, you can say, from an IT perspective. I'm going to describe this as not technical terminology, but North Carolina has a Microsoft box, an instance that we all work in. Within that box, we have access to certain tools. 2 tools. Everybody at DOT has access to the first one, which is Copilot Chat. That's free. It's automatically loaded on your computer when you go to Office 365. In my case, kind of annoyingly, is the first thing that always pops up when you go to that portal, right? So they're putting it in your face. That's there. That's going to operate with basic information off the web. The second column here is Copilot 365, which is a paid license of about $30 a month. We have about 200-ish people across the department that have those licenses right now. What the difference is between those 2 categories is Microsoft 365 has access to what you have access to in the Microsoft ecosystem. So what you have on SharePoint, what you have in your email, what you have on Teams. It can be added into the query that you're prompting Copilot for. Last year, we ran a pilot on the 365 Copilot. To tell you how quick this technology changes, we did a 6-week pilot. And by week 5, Copilot Chat came online. So we kind of have to go back and look and say, okay, well, some of this that we found through the 365 pilot was, yeah, we want it, we need it. How much of that is taken over by the free option in Copilot Chat? And that's something that all of our business units should think about when they're signing up for that $360 a year license per person in their unit to have those sorts of things. That said, there are good reasons to have a license. Again, having access to load those documents directly from your, say, unit SharePoint site when you're wanting to build and analyze information, you're going to want a license for that because Copilot Chat, you have to manually give it those documents. It has a limitation on the number and the size. That license kind of gets you out of that cap so you can do some more larger scale analysis. All right, so if you want a license, ServiceNow is your entry point. If you've got questions, call myself or Amin and we can work you through that process. So what about ChatGPT? That's like the next question we always get, right? Because let's be honest, Microsoft is great. A lot of times, some of our folks that have been dabbling in this is like, well, ChatGPT or Claude is better. And that's valid in some of these use cases. So at the state level from DIT, they have put out a new generative public AI policy, which basically says you can use what you want as long as it's not on the prohibited list. Current prohibited list is on the screen. And you are not feeding it risky data. So we have a state data classification guide. This is just an extract from it. Kind of walk ourselves through this. If it's already accessible to the public, happy path. Anything after that, you're going to need to think about it. The way I describe publicly accessible Gen AI to folks that are new to it is think about it like the internet, right? Over the years, we've all learned, don't put everything about yourself on the internet, and don't trust everything you read on the internet. That's how we should think about publicly generated AI. As DOT professionals, if you are giving it data to analyze, assume that you just answered a FOIA request and it's fully public. Think about it that way. And vice versa, when it tells you an answer, generative AI is trained to be a people pleaser. It wants to give you an answer you like. We all have to have our critical thinking hats on as we use these tools. But we also don't want to hinder progress. We're not saying don't use them ever. Use them with some guide rails. So yeah, don't trust everything you read on the internet, guys. And I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to give us a little bit more detail. 4. That one? Yep. So real quick, ServiceNow request goes in. You will be contacted and assigned an LMS, a training that you have to complete. Once you complete that, you'll be assigned a license. Okay, so that's the process there. Kevin, let me get up your presentation. All right, and we will be back for exercise in a little bit.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Lacey. Going to talk about a project we did, AI TEPL pilot, and TEPL stands for Traffic Engineering Policies, Procedures, and Legal Authority for those who are going to be tested later. There will be a test later, and I have AI tools for sale to help you pass all these tests. So here's my agenda. I'm not going to read every word to you. Most of you probably know how to read. If not, you can get ChatGPT to read it to you later. So AI is not really a new idea. AI has been around for quite some time. Science fiction, imagine, science fiction came long before the man was able to build something. So there was a book in 1872 that had machines becoming conscious and then exceeding man's capabilities. So AI has been around since 1872, at least in the science fiction world. And of course, if you haven't seen the movie or read the book, I, Robot, it's worth watching. It's worth reading the book if folks still read nowadays. And then, of course, the Terminator, he seems to always be back, and newer and better Terminator. So you're looking at a long history of people thinking about machines taking over, and who knows, maybe we are already inside the matrix and we're batteries for some computer system somewhere. But anyway, when we talk about the real AI and computers versus science fiction, it's been around since the 1940s. When neural networking came around, that was invented looking at large data sets, even right after computers started becoming available. Of course, these things started out with things like checkers and chess, started doing machine learning, learning how to recognize patterns, recognize lots of patterns very fast, and then eventually started augmenting decision making. And a couple of examples that's been used in DOT in the last few years is AI, machine learning has been used to identify intersection types, looking at guardrail ends from video, pavement condition, stuff like that. All that falls under the AI umbrella. Then you get to the augmented decision making, and this is where it starts making, after it's practice learning from the human, that looks like a guardrail end, and this is the type it is. After it learns enough of that process, it starts making the decision, and then hopefully you have somebody checking it. This graph there, it's the hype cycle. And anybody ever heard of the hype cycle? If you've never heard of the hype cycle, you really need to look at it, because you got innovation trigger. That's, somebody comes up with an idea and they start working on it. Then you got the peak of inflated expectations. That sounds, kind of like going through high school. And then you have a trough of disillusionment. That really is high school, right? And then you got this little slope of enlightenment. And then finally, you actually get to something where you're productive. You're on the plateau of productivity. Those are all pretty important areas of developing technology. So where is AI? Well, this is the 2020 item. And it said we're about, 3 or 4 years out, 5 years out. But what happens is AI is split up into many, many more little bubbles. So I like to think of, here's a good idea about AI. I see a few gray hairs in here, people who remember the world before the internet existed, before Al Gore invented it and made it go worldwide. Well, consider AI in 2026 kind of like the internet in 2020. So can you imagine a day without having internet connectivity? I mean, you can go by those times and, you can go on a cruise ship out in the middle of the ocean and you can still be connected if you want to, but my preference is choosing not to. You have a little bit more fun. But going to an environment that you don't have access to the internet, you can't buy your favorite thing from wherever, immediately pay for it, all that type stuff. That used to exist. I get a little note down there is because there are some people in our workforce today. If you're 20-something, maybe a slower road to small short bus to school in your early 30s, you may not have experienced a time that did not have the internet. I was talking to some folks in our office a couple weeks ago, and their whole life has had the internet. So it's not new. New technology is not new unless you've experienced a time before it existed. So we've all experienced a time before AI, but we haven't all experienced a time before the internet. Here's the 2024 hype curve, and I just got a couple of bubbles in there I wanted to point out. They got a timeline for sovereign AI. Sovereign AI kind of sounds scary, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, it's not, it's not Skylab or Skynet taking over. That's actually, they're seeing most of the AI tools are managed by large companies like Google, Apple, Microsoft. What they expect is that there's going to be more development in AI, and companies will own their own AI engines and so forth. I like the one that says AI engineering and responsible AI. So if that's still a few years out, what is this AI that we're talking about now? Irresponsible AI? Yeah, that's another one. And then first principles AI. It's still in the innovation trigger standpoint. What's first principle AI? Is that the one that says that the machine doesn't kill us? We haven't invented that yet. That seems like would be first, doesn't it? You would hope so. If you get nothing out of my presentation today other than my corny jokes, is I want you to look at this warning. I'm going to give it several times. If you're an engineer and you're using AI as part of your solving your work task and doing whatever you're doing, and I'm not talking about drawing a nice little picture like this one here or reading a document and giving you some bullet points, but if you're using AI to respond to important questions that your clients are asking, and you don't realize AI hallucinates, AI makes errors, AI has biases, and as we talked about earlier, AI wishes to please. All those are areas that these tools will steer you in the wrong direction. And that's part of what we looked at with this project. AI is a tool. You need to use it properly. Anybody ever use a crescent hammer? Yeah. If you got a crescent wrench, you've used a crescent hammer before. How about use a knife as a screwdriver? Come on. I see a bunch of men in here. The garage is way too far to go get that screwdriver when you just open the drawer and get the, until your wife beats you for tearing up all your knives. So it's a tool, use them properly. This was our project, and I'm not going to, again, go through each point of it, but we controlled the data that we went into what I'm going to call managed systems. We used an off-the-shelf company that built a tool as Beacon software. They built a pilot tool. I want to emphasize pilot because it was not a full-blown tool. They gave us a very good price point. so we could go through this process. And they did an excellent job with that. We also built an in-house tool. And what I mean by in-house is a guy named Taylor Honeycutt with Exalt built a chat-style tool. And then we used some wild and free tools that we were talking about earlier, the Chat GPT and things of that nature, to ask some questions. And we wasn't really comparing whether one tool was better than the other, but the idea is let's find out what are some of our risks using these tools and what are some of the challenges depending on what direction we decide to go, whether it's a DOT, your own agencies, whatever you decide to do, identify some of those and maybe put together a little roadmap. So I went ahead and talked about this. The Beacon software, they built a tool and it used a Beacon deploy DUI, and it was a document intelligence platform purposely built for government knowledge. And that's all I'm going to say about it because it's above me what they did. But what they did is they built a chat style tool. We fed in, we controlled the data that the managed tools used to answer some questions. And you guys can read this later on how it works and what all they did to it. And of course, we had to prepare the data. You got to parse it up, you chunk it up, you do other stuff to it. But again, the data is the most important piece. As I mentioned earlier, Taylor Honeycutt, he built what we're calling the DOT bot. Again, it's a chat style. Here's a screenshot of it, and it has a couple interesting little pull-down menus and so forth, but it does the same thing. You put in the prompt, it goes out under the same controlled data sets, TPL, the MUTCD, transportation-related general statutes, the North Carolina Administrative Code on transportation items. Those were the items that we controlled the data for. And then what I'm calling the wild and free, because they are free and they are pretty wild, but Gemini from Google, ChatGPT, and the Microsoft Copilot. And there's others out there. We developed a bunch of questions, mostly traffic engineering related, since TPL was the basis of it. And things like there's not a North Carolina statute prohibiting bicycles on interstate highways and freeways. Are bicycles allowed on the interstate highways in North Carolina? The MUTCD allows left turns on red when two one-way streets intersect. Is it allowed in North Carolina? And what's considered a non-divisible load for oversized movements? Are there exceptions? And believe it or not, from a federal standpoint, milk is considered a non-divisible load, even though you can pour a little bit out of the jug real easy. And same thing with some steel coils. But those are the kind of questions that DOT gets. There's technical design questions that are also in the TPL and things like that we asked. And we said, well, what kind of responses did we get? We asked 10 questions, the same 10 questions to each tool. And the managed tools, the DOT bot and the Beacon tool, did perform better. And you can see the averages. If you average the two managed tools, it comes out to be 67% versus the average of the wild and free at 51%, or I'm sorry, 53%. The managed tools actually had some very good responses, 100%. They also had some very poor responses. The wild and free had some pretty good scoring responses. I was the one that scored, so to try to get the errors out of the the biases and stuff like that, it was one response. I put the question together. I did this stuff for 30 years, so I figured I might know a thing or two about what's in those items. So we got some guidance here on the managed tools. Again, it used only authoritative sources because that's all we allowed it to use. That's very important, especially when you look at all the information that's available on the World Wide Web. These tools provided more confidence in the sources and also provided slightly better correct answers. The individual tools did not repeat. You could ask the same prompt and you did not necessarily get the same response. And the second or third response may not be any better than the first. So it didn't build upon itself like that. It was a little slower as far as time-wise, but it was not, minutes or any of that business. It was usually seconds. And in both cases, on the managed tools, they try to fit some of the data into your question, even if it didn't fit. So, if the answer is, can you put a square peg in a round hole? The answer is yes. Can you put a round peg in a square hole? The answer is yes, if you have a big enough crescent hammer. So the findings on that is that, the confidence in the data, it's reliable, that's a pro, provided better initial responses, able to manage the settings if you're managing the data, that means you can provide feedback loops and so forth. It's customizable, and you can also help it use these tools to start improving your data. Creating that metadata that no one has for all their data, all their documents. The cons, it's not free. The technology is rapidly developing. This technology is going to be changing, not annually, but probably more like monthly, if not more quicker than that. But the tools continue to have the hallucination, they lack context, and so forth. The wild and free, I put some more caution lines on here. Don't bet your career on the responses you get. Use at your own risk. And that's with any AI tool, but it's even more so with the chat GPTs and things of that nature. Because what happens with that when you're using the internet as your base source of data, it pulls from everywhere. Reddit, some of those, when you're looking at cloud sourcing of information, there's people out there who actually put the wrong answers to questions in Reddit. Why? Maybe they're just mischievous. Maybe they're just ignorant. Maybe they don't know. It may be correct in one state. As I mentioned, you can ride a bicycle on a interstate highway in California, but you can't do it in North Carolina, not legally. So, the pros and cons on that, it's free. You can use this tool to help narrow down. If you don't know where to start looking, you can use these tools to start narrowing down that huge data set. And that's very valuable because instead of you having to look and read and chomp through, tens or hundreds of hours of stuff, you can at least narrow it down and start looking at where you might have an opportunity of finding better results. The cons, unreliable results, uses non-authoritative sources, not customizable, at least, again, the free stuff. It may plagiarize and violate copyright laws. Don't expect it to not do that. Just like, we all did some of us did when we were in high school and, copying off your neighbors. Creates a false sense of security, a false sense of accuracy. This was one of the findings that I felt was pretty important here. And we took another group of 17 questions, gave to a young man who is a senior at NC State, so we know he's pretty smart, and had him go through and answer the questions, rate how well he thought his response was to accuracy, to it being accurate, run the same question through chat GPT. Did the chat GPT improve his confidence or not? And then we went and looked and see how well the two came up. What we found is that in just about every case, he was more confident that his answer was correct or the AI tool response was correct. What we found out is the tool was only right about 35% of the time. So, and 65% of the time it was either incorrect, partially incorrect, or very misleading. So back to that warning, don't bet your job on it. AI tools don't get fired. People do. Caitlin's already said that we need people in the process. People in the process because people get fired, not the tools. All right. The tools also generate very persuasive language that, yes, this is correct. I'm telling you, you read through the response and you're thinking, this has to be correct. I was using it for helping someone prepare for a court case, looking at whether or not a blue light takes precedence over traffic control. We all know that you are supposed to yield to blue lights, and what are the legal standards for that? Well, it said that in quotation marks, blue lights takes precedence over all traffic control, and it was quoted in 2 different statutes of the North Carolina General Statutes. I'm saying, well, gee, there you go. That's perfect. Go look at those general statutes. That phrase, those words do not exist. That's the hallucination, friends. It makes stuff up, and and the biases that come out of it is part of it's the data, part of it's the prompts, part of it is just how it's built. So, if DOT never invests a dime in AI, DOT is going to be dealing with AI because what it's going to do is all the public people who don't like what you're getting ready to do, they're going to go to AI and they're going to build a better, stronger, more accurate argument against whatever you're doing. At least that's how they're going to feel. They're going to feel it's better, they're going to feel it's more accurate, and there's probably a 65% chance that it's even more incorrect and not even applicable because they're going to be basing it off the World Wide Web as a whole, all the other stuff that's out there. So AI it's here to stay, it's coming. No reason to worry about trying to ignore it. So when we start looking at, developing going forward, it's like everything else. You can choose to do in-house work. You can choose to outsource it. You can choose to ignore it. We didn't go through and say, well, here's what DOT or some agency should do, because the one thing that's absolutely certain is it's going to take dedicated staffing. It's going to be dedicated staffing as you're going to have, that's your job. It's not your part-time job while you do other stuff, but it needs to be your job, or you're going to pay somebody it's going to be their job. So what we did is we looked at some of the, what are some of the risk points, and when you start thinking about these risk points, if the answer is no, then maybe you can keep more of these things in-house. If the answer is yes, if the answer is yes, such as, can your agency compete in a highly developing and volatile environment to keep the staff that you've developed? Anybody remember the Y2K stuff? How fast were we going through IT people? I mean, sometimes they change people in the same meeting. That's how quick they were going. All right, if your agency can't maintain your staff, then you probably want to, outsource. If your agency will invest in keeping up with the changes in the technology, that's not only the software changes, that's going to be the hardware changes. If it takes you 6 months to buy a new advanced computer, well, you've already missed that boat. Scalability. Is your agency going to be able to dedicate the resources to go from a relatively small pilot type projects to a large scale enterprise wide? If you're not able to scale up, then you probably should look at outsourcing that. Timing. Is your agency going to be able to complete and develop these and implement these applications in a reasonable time? And if the answer is no, again, outsource. Again, I just got the 5-minute flag, so I got to hurry up through here. So the thing that we often forget when we look at doing things in-house, especially when it's advanced technology, is the retraining of people, the delays that retraining cost, the delays in waiting for new equipment to get purchased. All those are cost because your business units are waiting for that tool to be delivered. Again, another warning. If you get nothing out of this, it's a warning. And here, again, I mentioned AI. AI is not accountable. AI doesn't get fired. The engineer, the technician, the individual human is the one who pays the outcomes of the problems. We developed what I'm calling a roadmap. It's some statements that DOT should do, or any agency who's looking at this. You should develop a statement, a policy statement. Sounds like one's been developed. The North Carolina Board of Engineering and Land Surveyors has developed a really good policy going forward. It says you're responsible for whatever you use AI for. And for engineers, that's nothing new. You had a new engineer who was working on your team, you were responsible for their work. AI is that new engineer. They just happen to be, 2 years old right now. So engage a subject matter expert. We are at the peak of the hype bubble. There's people out there selling everything that can possibly be done. AI, just like I said, I got tools that give you answers for all your AI tests. They can sell you, they will sell you anything that you think you might need, as long as they get you on a project. They're going to sell it to you, and then they're going to try to develop it. And for those who didn't live through the early IT stuff, more than 50% of the early IT projects crashed and burned. You can expect similar things at this stage, especially right now. There's more AI hype out there, and it's going to continue to grow. But the tool is going to advance. I'm not suggesting don't use AI. What I'm suggesting is that if you're going to invest in AI, invest in projects that are in production or foundational. Everybody heard Julie White talk yesterday about how they use an AI to process invoices. That is a staff multiplier. It's repetitive. It's a good use of that technology and capabilities today. Reading a bunch of aerial photos and trying to identify all the intersection types across the state, good tool. It can, that's been around for a few days, a few weeks, months, years. But when you start looking at foundational items, using AI to start preparing your data, because DOT has, petabytes, if not more, of data in all different formats. And DOT has, for years, wanted to have better data management, better data governance, and the biggest challenge is getting the work units to start putting their metadata together. Let the tool do that for you. The tool has the capability of creating that metadata, whatever you want it to say, read the data, start building that foundation so when the things can come along and do more, the data is in a shape that it will be helpful. And you can use it to start making sure that your data is updated, it's relevant, and so forth. I wouldn't build an AI tool just to answer questions like we did with this pilot. I would use it right now building that foundation, and a chat type tool is kind of a bonus because there will be lots of questions, but you're managing the data that you come from. So again, basically data quality, data updates, and a data feedback. So when you are updating or you have answered or you have these policy statements, put them in there so when your new engineer, people coming along, people who work for you, they can put that type of stuff in there and get that question answered. So, the next 20 years, it's going to be very exciting. I mean, the last 20 years, 26 years has been super exciting. We all are very fortunate to work in an industry that has been in a constant state of change. However, our roads still look like many times still like they did 100 years ago. They're still black, still asphalt, still got markings on them. But they're better roads, better markings, better technology, and better users. AI is it's going to be very interesting to see how it becomes entwined in our daily lives, just like the internet has. So, thank you.
Flip us back in presentations here, and now that we told you everything to be worried about AI, we're going to get your ideas of how we're going to use it. So, Amin's going to walk us through that process. I just want to say, though there is risk, there is also opportunity here, and there's a lot of opportunity that we can take advantage of as an agency, and those good ideas are going to come at the grassroots level, which is what we're going to attempt to do in the next few minutes. So as Amin kind of walks us through the process that we're all going to work through in small groups, I'm going to come around and hand out some materials, share with your friends. We got a big room here. I don't have a paper for everybody. So hand it over to Amin. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And it's hard to follow after Kevin's presentation. So my name is Amin Hazafeh. I'm AI Program Manager in NCDOT. And if you have any question about AI or concern or anything, just want to say hello, just reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you. So today I'm going to talk about the AI opportunities in NCDOT. And the focus is actually, this is the old presentation without my notes. Okay. So today we are going to talk about how to identify AI use cases. And by use case, I mean a customized AI tool that is good for your team and your team only, not for the whole state agency. Kevin and Caitlin talked about what is AI, governance cycle, AI hype, and I'm going to talk to you about how we can use AI in our daily basis. The right question is, what is the problem that we have? Not how we can use AI. Because of the AI hype, many organizations, they just start with, let's use AI in our existing process. But the right approach to using AI is that let's find a pain point. Let's find something that was repetitive, or because of the technology limitation, was that in 10 years ago we couldn't do some analysis. But now, with the recent advancement, it is possible. The first step is identifying the problem. I want you to look at your existing workflows, try to see where AI could help. For example, if there is a process that slows you down, if there is something that needs a lot of manual review, if something is super repetitive, or something that needs tons of data, looking at multiple data sources, bring them together, and do the analysis. This could be a really good pain point. Also, technology limitation. There was a time that we only had Excel. Now we have more tools. And because we have more tools, we can look at the data in a new way. We can analyze it in a way that was not possible before. The next step after identifying the problem is that identifying the data. So if you have a problem, what is the data that you use to overcome that issue or problem? It could be, for example, an invoice, a PDF file, a text file. It could be a guideline, a guidebook, a standards or policy. It could be something like a database, like an Excel file, or a shape file. It could be anything. You need to identify the data sets that you need to answer those questions. After identifying those, you need to look at the data and see what you need actually from the data. For example, if you are working with a lot of PDFs and you're looking at specific terms, trying to find, for example, let's say, invoice dates or the total amount in an invoice. I'm using invoice because every one of us actually went through it at some point. So that's the extraction that we need the AI tool to do instead of us. If you are looking at a, let's say, aerial image of a location, you want to see if there's a road exists, if there's a right-of-way issue, you are looking at computer vision. You are trying to extract information from there. And if you are looking, for example, at historical data, let's say, I don't know, traffic congestion in some place, and try to see if, that issue insists in 20 years from now, you're looking at prediction. So it is good that we can, distinguish between these tools and try to see what aspect of the AI we want to use. And I'm simplifying it as much as I can. Also, pattern detection, for example, if we are seeing, for example, in crash and road safety analysis, there's certain issues in certain areas, AI could help us with that. But, it's very difficult, probably. The next step in defining the AI use case is identifying the potential impact and defining success. So the major KPIs or key performance indicators that we use to see if a product is successful is something like time saving, trying to see if we are using AI, does it reduce the amount of time that we have to spend on it, or are we actually spending more time on a process? For example, in an invoice processing, it could be a 30-minute task to go through everything, extract information, compare rate with the SAP. AI could do that in an instant, for example. So obviously, it is time saving. Also, error reduction. Since if we build a good product, the hope is that it minimizes the errors. So that's something else that we need to consider. And overall operational efficiency. We want to build AI to reduce the friction, not increase friction in our everyday workflow. There's also something else that is very important, and I think looking at the future project, we need to talk about it in the first kickoff meeting. What is the failure criteria? We can deliver a product, we can build something, but we need to make a decision if that thing works or not. It is easy to identify, the products that are not working properly. So we need to come up with some definition that and says, for example, something is not working. For example, if I'm making an invoice processing app and it only processes 10% of the invoices, and for the rest of the 90%, I have to spend a lot of time and also spend an extra time to see if something's working properly or not. That's not successful. So we need to document that and make sure we define the failure criteria. Also, success criteria. This tool is successful, for example, if it works properly 90% of the time without human intervention. So these are very important. So I'm missing one page here. I updated the PowerPoint, but it's not here. It's okay. So I had an example for invoice processing. In the invoice processing, using AI to extract information from invoices and compare it with the databases that we have. The problem is that how we can extract data. The source of the data are the PDFs, the scanned invoices that we receive, or the faxed one that we still receive. And the task that we want AI to do is to look at the data and extract some information and additionally compare them to the existing databases that we have. The impact analysis is that we are going to save time because we are not manually reviewing those invoices. And from there, we can define success or failure criteria and look at it and say, for example, this tool is successful in 90% of the time. So we can say it is successful, for example. Or if it's not working properly or only works on 20% of the data, it fails. So we can rethink our whole process and decide if we want to invest more on the task on the product or not. So now we have a small group activity. What's that?
You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the small group activity, I want you all to get to group of 4 or 5, depending on the Yeah, find a person with a paper. Look at your neighbors, and if you can, for the person who's submitting the use case from their group, put their information over there. Think about your existing work process and try to see how you can fit AI in it. If you cannot fit it, that is okay. We don't want to use AI for the sake of AI. So that's very important. Yeah, think about it. 10 minutes, is that good?
All right, so we've got about 15 minutes, 20-ish minutes left in the session. We're going to do this for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to ask a couple of groups. If you have a really awesome idea you want other people to hear about, we're going to ask 1 or 2 groups to volunteer that, and then we're going to wrap up with questions for the last 5 minutes. So you got 10 minutes. Again, the goal is just to talk to the folks around you, generate some ideas. What have you already been thinking about? If you get a chance to write it down, we'd love to. We understand where that's probably not realistic in this. On the back of the paper and on our wrap-up, we will give you a URL to where if you've got a really good idea that you want help vetting and getting it ready and prioritizing it, there's an intake mechanism for that on our AI and Hub site that we will show you, okay? So please just have conversation about the cool things, and we will bring you back in about 10 minutes.
And it's okay to be boring, with the use case. Boring is good. Made a lot of changes this morning to this slides, and I was like,
Well, I had to preview them yesterday.
I went actually to the folder that she provided. So yeah, I made a lot of changes. No problem. I was like, okay, where's my notes? Where are my 2 additional slides that I added?
Sorry.
No problem. It's okay.
All right, I'm going to float around and eavesdrop.
Okay. Should I join?
I think floating around and eavesdropping sounds good.
I was talking, that's good.
That is good.
So,
Your fear is always silence. So
yeah, sounds good.
I will cut them about 2 back for questions.
tell them to come to the front.
Yeah, it's way quicker if they can just.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it kills a lot of time in between unless you ask the question and go on to the next person. Yeah. I think you're exactly right. Let them come up front.
All right, 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. Thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to start coming back together. I will ask, raise your hand if you have an idea that came out of your group that you want to get other people on board with. Anybody got one they want to share? Awesome, thank you. We got our 2 volunteers.
Okay, this is why y'all are lining up for questions. I'm not running around this whole room.
So, Caitlin, my idea actually comes from something we're doing presently in roadway CAD support. We use the ServiceNow platform to render CAD support, or trying to grow that initiative. And right now, all that exists as if a CAD user has a CAD question, they log into this portal, they ask their question, a ticket comes to my small team, we answer the question, we publish it to the website, and it creates this running list of Q&A. And right now, that's all it exists as. Well, ServiceNow, I know, has some sort of built-in AI agent ability. We haven't unlocked it or accessed it or something. But what I'd like to do is, as this grows, and we are just budding with ORD, we just released a new workspace, and I think a whole lot of questions are getting ready to come. So it's a great opportunity to activate something like this, to create an AI help agent that could at least sniff through the existing answers we've already provided. And if somebody asks the same question, rather than typing it in a search box and having to hunt through all the Q&A, the AI agent could do that sniffing out part and say, hey, this is the answers that have been provided thus far. And that'll save time for us to, that will be the first line of defense in giving answers to questions that have already been answered, and we can focus on answering new questions.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's a use case that we have, a similar use case has been piloted in a couple of areas of kind of thinking about how can we use these tools as almost like a tier 1 kind of help desk, right? Like what are those kind of basic questions that we can point people at maybe the right rabbit hole so that our experts can really focus on that kind of tier 2, we need that person in the loop for. So great idea, and Jason, we'll have a meeting about that whenever you want.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So while he's sharing this idea over here, if you have questions, again, I'm not running around the room, so please line up in the middle, and I'll take the microphone back there when we finish this so that if you have questions, we can move through those quickly because we are coming to the end of our time.
All right, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
All right, so our idea, I work in PMU. Our idea is regarding schedule, like trying to, when you get a project firsthand, trying to get a good AI program to kind of spit out a schedule that kind of gives you notes on your critical parts. Before we actually even do it manually to, and coordinate with all the units to get our schedule, we can. When I first came in, you guys mentioned this 365 paid version. I know it's, I guess, embedded with the other tools that we use as NCDOT. Mm-hmm. So I thought it would be great if we can kind of pull those, link with all those different areas of data, mm-hmm. and kind of pull something like, for example, like when we start on a project, or when we finish our project, we have our plans, then it goes to construction, then we get as-built. So kind of get the information from when the project first initiated to when it actually goes to construction, the changes that were made based on the type of project and so forth. You kind of can find similar projects to it and build us a schedule, give us notes on, critical things that need to happen to get us there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. We have a current use case kind of similar to that for structure estimates and materials estimates in that regard, where it pulls projects around it that are kind of similar to give you a starting place. So something like that for schedules could be really interesting too. So line up for any additional questions. Last thing I will plug is if you are a DOT staff person, you have access to an internal SharePoint site. Just go on to Office 365 and search data or AI. It should pop up for you. Everybody has access to it. This website has the catalog of AI use cases that my team knows about across the department. So if you're doing one and it's not on the inventory, this is what our leadership is looking at for when they're getting questions about what are we doing with AI as a department. So if you're not represented there and you're doing something, please contact our team. Also on the website is where you can get access to kind of a curated library of LinkedIn Learning that we all have access to as a department, both at that beginner, intermediate, and expert level for diving deeper into these areas. This website is also where, and it's big on the homepage, where you can get to a form to tell us, hey, we want to come talk to you, and we can catalog those as upcoming ideas as a department. Also on this homepage is where we're going to be storing information about our data governance program, data management best practices, and we're also hopeful that this year that we'll be creating some communities of practice across the department so we can keep having conversations like we did today. This stuff is changing very quickly. We need to lean on each other for, hey, what did you learn last week, and have those conversations. So, questions?
Yeah. So I had a use case that it probably might work well in, and that is responses to contact us requests. And so most of us business units, often, especially project management, receive these requests, and they sometimes respond to them can be, take a little bit of time. And so if we had an AI tool that could allow us to search different resources quickly, so we can gather information and respond effectively, but also respond consistently with other responses that communications is okay with. That would be great. And so we identified the SharePoint site and public input site as sources where effective sources, but also other similar contact us responses to the question that we receive from the requester.
Yeah, I do think that contact us use case is going to be a top priority probably this coming year. There's some stuff on the IT side that's causing us to do a little bit of rebuilding and rework. Technology changes, you got to re-platform. If we're going to re-platform, we should be considering AI at the same time, because I agree. I think contact us is a great potential use case. Okay. I'm loud.
Hi, I've worked with contracts at the rail division, consultant contracts, and there are two areas that I could see where that would be very helpful. One is doing our cost comparisons between our in-house and our firm estimates. I could see this really speeding that up. And then another big thing would be, I don't know if the salaries and the overhead rates that are stored in CRS, if that can be broken through. But when our firms are putting together their estimates, if it could tie into the CRS database, we wouldn't have to have conversations back and forth about your overhead's wrong or this person's salary's wrong. We spend a lot of time correcting and going back to firms on that. And it seems like that would be a really simple thing to solve there as they're putting employees' names on their estimates. If it could, it wouldn't have to tell it to the world, but it could just tie in and read those rates, and that would be huge for us.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid idea, and we have a preliminary pilot in that area, but it is post the original invoice submission. We're looking at how can we bring that feedback loop earlier, right, so that it's less manual on our staff to complete. So I think it's a great idea. Hey, Katie.
I just have a general question, I guess. What are some of the methodologies you guys are using currently to safeguard the PII, like personal identifiable information, and how that then gets used?
Yeah, a lot of that is relying on training right now, because a lot of these tools are self-directed tools that if you give it the data, it can share it. For the use cases that we're going to be vetting from a custom perspective, that will be one of the check marks of, is it something we're going to pursue for investment or not? May fall into the category of, if it's PII, it may not fall into that category. If it does, if there's a high value and a high feasibility of that and it has PII, we may still tackle it. Think about DMV use cases, right? That's PII all over the place. So we want to leverage it. Unfortunately, the guide rails, in custom tools, we can enforce them with some coding and boundaries there. The wild and free world, this is why we're doing this training today, to hopefully tell everybody, please don't put PII out there, because you're exposing everybody when you do that.
And I guess just a follow-up question, the application versus the web use cases. The application, is that more of a sandbox, DOT sandbox protected space, or?
Thank you for asking that question, because I realized when I was talking through that might have been confusing. So when I talked about the Microsoft box for our out-of-the-box Gen AI tools, it's as much as you want to trust the vendor in that case, but the Microsoft box in Copilot, if you're a DOT staffer, if you are using Copilot 365, Copilot Chat, our understanding from Microsoft is that stays in the North Carolina box and is not used to train future models. Again, trust for what you will on that, right? So you are much safer if you're going to put DOT data into something. Copilot, you're going to be okay. We don't want you putting a lot of DOT data out into the truly wild and free tools. Microsoft is kind of a sub-level of that, if that helps.
Yeah, yes, I can.
So I will say, we only have 15-minute or a 13-minute break, so we're gonna go ahead and end this, so you guys can go ahead to your break, to your next session. It's a grab-and-go snack, so there is apparently something, so go do that in 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Did you wanna collect their paper?
If you wrote something on your paper, even if
If
it's
you wrote
chicken
something,
scratch, we'd love to have it. That's fine. Amin, would you come here? I want to talk to you. I present at the next session, so I'm going to go make sure that I'm going to leave you with Amin with questions. Okay? Perfect.
You mentioned that deep secret prohibited. So are you guys going to be using